Al Capone killed his first man at age 14. The victim was his own teacher. Nobody ever found the body. What drove a child to murder? September 23, 1913. Brooklyn Elementary School. Young Alfonso Capone walked into Mr. Henderson's classroom with a knife hidden in his coat. This is the story of how America's most notorious gangster began his life of crime as a terrified child, and why the murder of his teacher set him on a path that would make him the most feared man in the country. It started with a simple math problem. Alfonso Capone was not a good student. He was 14 years old and still in the 5th grade because he had been held back several times. The other children made fun of him for being older and bigger than everyone else. Alfonso's family had moved to Brooklyn from Italy when he was very young. His father worked at a barber shop, and his mother took care of their 8 children. They were poor but honest people who wanted their son to get an education. But Alfonso hated school. The teachers were strict and often cruel to immigrant children. They made fun of his accent and his old clothes. Alfonso felt stupid and angry every day. Mr. William Henderson was Alfonso's mathematics teacher. He was a thin, mean man who enjoyed humiliating students who couldn't keep up with their lessons. On September 23, 1913, Mr. Henderson was teaching fractions to the class. He called on Alfonso to solve a problem on the blackboard. "Alfonso, come up here and show us how to add 1/3 plus 1/4. Alfonso walked slowly to the front of the classroom. He stared at the numbers on the blackboard, but they didn't make sense to him. He had never understood fractions. "I don't know," Alfonso said quietly. "You don't know?" Mr. Henderson said loudly. "You're 14 years old and you can't do simple arithmetic? What's wrong with you?" The other children started giggling. Alfonso's face turned red with embarrassment. "Maybe if you spent less time acting like a street thug and more time studying, you might learn something," Mr. Henderson continued. Alfonso clenched his fists. He hated being called stupid in front of the whole class. "I'm not stupid," Alfonso said. "Oh, really?" Mr. Henderson picked up his wooden ruler and walked toward Alfonso. "Then prove it. Solve the problem." Alfonso stared at the blackboard again. The numbers seemed to swim before his eyes. He couldn't concentrate with everyone watching him. "I can't," Alfonso admitted. Mr. Henderson raised his ruler and struck Alfonso across the knuckles. The wooden ruler made a sharp crack against Alfonso's hand. "Wrong answer," Mr. Henderson said. "Try again." Alfonso looked at his hand. There was a red mark across his knuckles where the ruler had hit him. 1/3 plus 1/4, Mr. Henderson repeated. "It's simple mathematics. Even a child should know this." Alfonso tried to think, but his mind was blank. He was too angry and humiliated to focus. "I don't know," Alfonso said again. Mr. Henderson hit him with the ruler again, this time harder. "You will stand here until you get it right," Mr. Henderson said. "Class, watch Alfonso. This is what happens to lazy students who don't apply themselves." Alfonso stood at the blackboard for the rest of the mathematics lesson. Every few minutes Mr. Henderson would ask him to solve the problem, and when Alfonso couldn't answer, he would hit him with the ruler. By the end of class, Alfonso's hands were covered with red welts. He was shaking with rage and humiliation. When the school bell rang, Alfonso didn't leave with the other students. He sat at his desk and watched Mr. Henderson clean the blackboard. "You can go now, Alfonso," Mr. Henderson said, without looking at him. "Perhaps tomorrow you'll be better prepared." Alfonso didn't move. He was thinking about how much he hated this man who had humiliated him in front of everyone. "I said you can go," Mr. Henderson repeated. Alfonso reached into his coat pocket and felt the small kitchen knife he always carried for protection. In his neighborhood, children needed weapons to defend themselves from older boys who might try to rob them. "Alfonso, leave now or I'll have you sent to the principal's office," Mr. Henderson said. Alfonso stood up slowly. Mr. Henderson was alone in the classroom, grading papers at his desk. "You think I'm stupid," Alfonso said quietly. "I think you're lazy," Mr. Henderson replied. "There's a difference. You made everyone laugh at me. I was trying to motivate you to study harder." Alfonso walked toward Mr. Henderson's desk. The teacher looked up and saw something dangerous in the boy's eyes. "Alfonso, sit down," Mr. Henderson said nervously. "You hit me," Alfonso said. "It was discipline. You needed to learn." Alfonso pulled the knife out of his coat. It was small but sharp, the kind used for cutting fruit and vegetables. Mr. Henderson saw the knife and jumped up from his chair. "Alfonso, put that away immediately," Mr. Henderson said. you're going to get yourself into serious trouble." "I'm already in trouble," Alfonso said. "You made sure of that." Mr. Henderson started moving toward the door, but Alfonso was faster. The 14-year-old boy was bigger and stronger than the thin teacher. Alfonso grabbed Mr. Henderson by the arm and pushed him against the blackboard. "Please don't hurt me," Mr. Henderson begged. "I'm sorry I was harsh with you. I was trying to help you learn." "You weren't trying to help," Alfonso said. "You were trying to make me feel stupid." Alfonso raised the knife. Mr. Henderson tried to grab the boy's wrist, but Alfonso was too strong. The knife went into Mr. Henderson's chest, just below his ribs. The teacher gasped and fell to his knees. Alfonso stared at what he had done. Blood was spreading across Mr. Henderson's white shirt. "Help me," Mr. Henderson whispered. Alfonso panicked. He hadn't meant to hurt the teacher this badly. He had just wanted to scare him. But it was too late. Mr. Henderson collapsed on the classroom floor. Alfonso knelt beside his teacher and tried to stop the bleeding, but there was too much blood. Within minutes, Mr. Henderson was dead. Alfonso sat next to the body, trying to figure out what to do. He was just a 14-year-old boy who had killed his teacher. If anyone found out, he would go to prison for the rest of his life. Alfonso looked around the empty classroom. School had ended an hour ago, and all the other teachers and students had gone home. Nobody knew he was still there. Alfonso made a decision that would change his life forever. He dragged Mr. Henderson's body to the supply closet at the back of the classroom. The closet was deep and dark, filled with old books and papers. Alfonso pushed the body as far back as possible and covered it with stacks of old textbooks. Then Alfonso cleaned up the blood from the classroom floor using rags from the janitor's supplies. He scrubbed until there was no trace of what had happened. Alfonso washed his knife in the water fountain and put it back in his coat pocket. Before leaving, Alfonso opened the classroom window and threw Mr. Henderson's grade book and papers outside. He wanted it to look like someone had broken in and robbed the classroom. Alfonso walked home as if nothing had happened. When his mother asked why he was late from school, Alfonso said he had been playing with friends in the park. The next morning, students arrived to find Mr. Henderson's classroom empty. The principal assumed the teacher was sick and sent a substitute. By the second day, the school administrators became worried. They sent someone to Mr. Henderson's boarding house, but he wasn't there either. The landlord said Mr. Henderson hadn't come home for 2 nights. His belongings were still in his room, but he had vanished completely. The police were called to investigate Mr. Henderson's disappearance. They questioned students and other teachers, but nobody had seen anything suspicious. Alfonso was interviewed along with all the other students in Mr. Henderson's class. "When was the last time you saw Mr. Henderson?" the police detective asked Alfonso. "At the end of mathematics class on Monday," Alfonso lied. He seemed normal. "Did he say anything about going somewhere or meeting someone?" "No, sir. He just dismissed class like always." The detective made notes and moved on to the next student. The police searched the school building, but they never thought to look in the supply closet of Mr. Henderson's classroom. The body was hidden too well beneath piles of old books. After a week, the police concluded that Mr. Henderson had probably left town for personal reasons. Teachers sometimes quit without notice, especially in poor neighborhoods like Brooklyn. A new mathematics teacher was hired, and life at the school returned to normal. But Alfonso was changed forever. The murder of Mr. Henderson had awakened something dark inside Alfonso. He had discovered that he could hurt people who hurt him, and that he could get away with it if he was careful. Alfonso started carrying his knife everywhere. He began getting into fights with other boys who challenged him. He developed a reputation as someone who was dangerous to cross. Alfonso's parents noticed that their son was becoming more aggressive and angry. They tried to discipline him, but Alfonso no longer listened to authority figures. Alfonso started skipping school regularly. Instead of attending classes, he would hang around with older boys who taught him how to steal and fight. By age 16, Alfonso was running with a gang of young criminals in Brooklyn. They robbed stores, beat up rivals, and terrorized honest people in the neighborhood. Alfonso had grown tall and strong. He was no longer the scared boy who had been humiliated in mathematics class. He was becoming the man who would someday be known as Al Capone. The body of Mr. Henderson was never found. Years later, when the old school building was torn down, construction workers discovered a skeleton in what used to be the supply closet. But by then, so much time had passed that nobody connected it to the missing teacher from 1913. Alfonso Capone never told anyone about his first murder. As he grew older and became involved in organized crime, He committed many more killings, but the murder of his teacher remained his most closely guarded secret. In 1931, when Al Capone was finally arrested and put on trial for tax evasion, prosecutors tried to prove he was a murderer. They brought witnesses who claimed Al had killed rivals and enemies throughout his criminal career. But they never learned about Mr. Henderson. Al Capone went to prison and eventually died of syphilis in 1947. He took the secret of his first murder to his grave. Some criminal psychologists believe that the humiliation Al suffered in Mr. Henderson's classroom created the rage that drove his entire criminal career. But there's more to the story that remained hidden for decades. In 1943, 30 years after Mr. Henderson's murder, an old woman named Mrs. Catherine Murphy came forward with a shocking revelation. Mrs. Murphy had been the school janitor's wife in 1913. She had been cleaning classrooms on the evening when Mr. Henderson disappeared. "I saw that Capone boy leaving the school very late that day," Mrs. Murphy told police. "He looked scared and he was carrying something wrapped in newspaper." Mrs. Murphy had been afraid to speak up at the time because Alfonso's gang had already developed a reputation for violence. She feared they would hurt her family if she told what she had seen. But now that Al Capone was in prison, Mrs. Murphy felt safe enough to reveal the truth. Police investigated Mrs. Murphy's claims, but by then it was too late. The old school building had been demolished, and any physical evidence was long gone. However, Mrs. Murphy's testimony revealed disturbing details about the days following Mr. Henderson's disappearance. According to Mrs. Murphy, Alfonso had returned to the school several times during the week after the murder. Mrs. Murphy also revealed that Alfonso had threatened other students who might have witnessed suspicious behavior. This information painted a picture of young Alfonso as a calculating killer who was already showing the cunning and brutality that would define his adult criminal career. The murder of Mr. Henderson wasn't just a moment of rage from a humiliated student. It was the first sign that Alfonso Capone had the mentality of a cold-blooded killer. After killing his teacher, Alfonso had systematically covered his tracks and intimidated potential witnesses. These were not the actions of a scared child, they were the tactics of a natural-born criminal. Mrs. Murphy's testimony also revealed that Alfonso's transformation after the murder was more dramatic than anyone realized. According to Mrs. Murphy, Alfonso began extorting lunch money from younger students within weeks of killing his teacher. Alfonso was also recruiting other students to help him with petty crimes around the neighborhood. By the time Alfonso dropped out of school at age 16, he had already established himself as the leader of a criminal organization. The scared boy who had been humiliated in mathematics class had transformed into a young crime boss who ruled through fear and violence. Mrs. Murphy's revelations helped explain how Al Capone developed his leadership skills so early. These were the lessons that would serve Al Capone throughout his criminal career. In Chicago during the 1920s, Al used the same tactics he had developed as a teenager in Brooklyn. He eliminated rivals through murder and intimidation. He corrupted officials with bribes and threats. He built a criminal empire based on the principle that violence was the ultimate solution to any problem. But it all started with the murder of a mathematics teacher who had humiliated him in front of his classmates. Mrs. Murphy's testimony also revealed the human cost of Alfonso's early crimes. Mr. Henderson had been a cruel teacher, but he had also been someone's son and friend. The ripple effects of Alfonso's crime extended far beyond the classroom where it occurred. Mrs. Murphy's story also revealed that other students had been damaged by witnessing Alfonso's transformation into a violent criminal. Some families moved out of the neighborhood entirely to escape Alfonso's growing influence. The murder of Mr. Henderson had poisoned an entire community, creating fear that lasted for years. Mrs. Murphy's testimony showed that Al Capone's path to becoming America's most notorious gangster wasn't just about his own development. It was also about how a community failed to recognize and stop a dangerous young criminal. If someone had stood up to that boy early on, maybe things would have been different, Mrs. Murphy reflected. This pattern of fear and inaction would follow Al Capone throughout his life. Police, politicians, and citizens in Chicago would all fail to stop Al's growing power because they were intimidated by his violence. The lessons Al learned from murdering his teacher, that violence works, that fear is power, and that careful planning can help you escape consequences, became the foundation of his entire criminal philosophy. When Al Capone died in 1947, he was remembered as one of history's most successful and ruthless criminals. But Mrs. Murphy's testimony revealed that Al's success was built on childhood trauma, unchecked violence, and community cowardice. The scared 14-year-old boy who couldn't solve a simple fraction problem grew up to become the most powerful gangster in American history. But it all started with a mathematics lesson and a teacher who pushed the wrong student too far. The murder of Mr. Henderson taught young Alfonso Capone that violence could solve his problems and that he could escape consequences if he was smart and careful. These lessons would guide Al Capone for the rest of his life, leading him to build a criminal empire based on fear, brutality, and the willingness to kill anyone who stood in his way. The death of one cruel teacher created America's most notorious criminal, proving that sometimes the smallest acts of cruelty can have consequences that echo through history. If this story of how childhood trauma created a monster moved you, subscribe for more untold stories of how history's most dangerous criminals began their paths to darkness. Like this video if you believe Mr. Henderson's cruelty helped create Al Capone's violence, and comment below. Do you think a different teacher could have changed Al Capone's destiny? Next week we're revealing another story of how a single moment in childhood shaped one of history's most infamous figures. Remember, the seeds of greatness and evil are often planted when we're young, and the adults in our lives have the power to nurture either outcome.